He wasn't supposed to disappear. Not him. Not a Rockefeller. Michael Clark Rockefeller was born on May 18, 1938, the youngest son of Nelson Rockefeller, governor of New York and future vice president of the United States. He grew up surrounded by marble floors, priceless art, and a last name that could open any door in the world. Yet from the start, Michael didn't care much about any of that. While his family built empires in business and politics, he wanted something different, something that couldn't be bought, traded, or inherited. He wanted meaning. He wanted to see the world stripped of all the polish his family name carried. He graduated cum laude from Harvard University in 1960 with a degree in history and economics, but classrooms didn't hold his attention for long. What drew him in were people, cultures that hadn't been touched by the industrial world. That same year, he joined a Harvard Peabody expedition to Dutch New Guinea to document the Dani people, highland tribes known for their rituals and tight-knit communities. Michael worked as a sound technician on the film crew, and the trip changed him. It was his first experience living among a society that still followed ancient customs and believed spirits moved through everything around them. When he returned to New York, he told friends he felt alive for the first time. Back home, surrounded again by privilege and order, he couldn't shake the memory of those remote valleys. His father's Museum of Primitive Art had started collecting pieces from indigenous cultures, carvings, totems, masks. But to Michael, they were more than objects. They were living proof of how different people could be from the world he knew. He wanted to go back, this time not as an observer, but as a collector, someone who could bring art and understanding back to the museum while experiencing the world in its rawest form. So in 1961, just 23 years old, he returned to Dutch New Guinea, but this time he went south, to the Asmat region, a dense, swampy coastal plain along the Arafura Sea. The Asmat were famous for their intricate wood carvings, their towering bis poles dedicated to ancestors, and a history of ritual warfare that had only recently ended under Dutch colonial pressure. To outsiders, they were mysterious, even frightening. To Michael, they were extraordinary. For months, he lived among them. He collected art, photographed ceremonies, and traded tools and cloth for carvings. He wrote in his journal that he wanted to understand what it means to be human in a place untouched by our world. The isolation didn't bother him. It thrilled him. He was tall, slim, always smiling, often barefoot, and constantly curious. The locals thought he was fearless. The other members of his team sometimes thought he was naive. Both were right. On November 18, 1961, Michael set out on a journey along the Utah River near the village of Otsjanep with Dutch anthropologist René Wassing and two local guides. They were traveling on a 40-foot twin pontoon boat, heavy with supplies and carvings. The weather turned without warning. A sudden squall, waves pounding against the pontoons. Water poured in faster than they could bail it out. The craft flipped. The two local guides swam for shore and made it. Rockefeller and Wassing clung to the overturned boat as the current dragged them farther out into the Arafura Sea. Night fell. The current was strong. They had no radio, no flares, no fresh water. By morning, they drifted for nearly 24 hours. The coastline was visible, roughly 10 miles away. Michael looked at Wassing and made a decision. "I think I can make it," he said. He tied two empty gasoline cans together as makeshift floats, stripped down to his shorts, and slid into the water. Wassing watched him swim steadily into the distance, each stroke smaller until he was just a dark spot on the waves. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. Wassing was rescued 2 days later by a Dutch Navy patrol. The moment he was pulled aboard, he asked whether they'd found Michael. They hadn't. Search teams began within hours. Helicopters scanned the coastline. Boats dragged the shallows. Nelson Rockefeller flew in from New York to oversee the search personally. He offered rewards, met with local officials, and pleaded with missionaries to contact every nearby village. Dutch forces combed the mangroves, and for weeks the headlines filled American papers. But nothing surfaced. Not a body, not a shirt, not a scrap of equipment. Officially, the Dutch colonial government ruled that Michael Rockefeller drowned. On February 2, 1964, a court in Westchester County, New York, declared him legally dead. But even then, not everyone believed it. The region where he vanished wasn't empty. It was home to Asmat clans, still rebuilding from violent contact with Dutch patrols years earlier. In 1957, one such patrol had attacked an Asmat village called Otshanep after an ambush, killing several men. Anthropologists later noted that in Asmat culture, cycles of revenge killings could last for years, each death requiring another to balance it. Some missionaries stationed nearby began hearing whispers that a white man had come out of the sea days after a storm, exhausted, and that the men of a certain village had killed him in revenge. Two Catholic priests working in the region wrote reports years later claiming villagers had quietly confessed to the killing. According to one, they described taking his body ashore and dividing his remains as part of a ritual act. Another missionary recalled being told that a white man had come swimming and was struck from behind as he tried to speak. The Dutch government investigated discreetly but dismissed the claims as rumor. They feared the political fallout of confirming that the son of one of America's most powerful families had been killed and possibly cannibalized on Dutch colonial soil. Still, the stories persisted. In one account, a Dutch official claimed he'd recovered a skull said to belong to Rockefeller, but the object vanished before testing could prove anything. Some locals say Dutch authorities threatened villages to stay silent. Others insist the stories were fabrications, twisted by fear and misunderstanding. The truth was buried in the same silence that had always protected the Asmat secrets. Decades later, journalist Carl Hoffman revisited the case. In 2014, his book Savage Harvest reignited the debate. Hoffman combed through Dutch archives, mission diaries, and oral histories. He spent time in the same villages, interviewing elders who still remembered the white man who came from the sea. Some described his final moments in chilling detail, how he was killed, how his remains were shared among the clans, how Dutch officials later visited and ordered the silence to continue. Hoffman's findings didn't prove anything, but they gave the rumor structure, turning folklore into something harder to ignore. Michael's family never accepted the cannibalism theory. His twin sister, Mary Rockefeller Morgan, later wrote about the loss in her book, When Grief Calls Forth the Healing. She described the bond between twins as something beyond explanation and said that accepting her brother's death, by drowning, not violence, was the only way to live without being consumed by uncertainty. For her, the mystery wasn't an adventure story. It was a lifelong wound. Today, the art Michael collected still exists. Some of it hangs in the Michael C. Rockefeller wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Visitors wander past carved totems, bisque poles, and ancestral figures that once stood in Asmat villages. Few know that many of those pieces came from the expedition that ended in his disappearance. His name is etched on the gallery wall in sleek black letters, elegant, permanent, unbothered by the chaos that claimed him. Looking at the photos of him now, he doesn't look like someone who belonged to boardrooms or politics. There's a softness in his face, a curiosity in his eyes. He was 23, barely a man, but he believed in the idea that art and understanding could bridge the gap between civilizations. That curiosity was its own kind of faith. Maybe that faith made him brave. Maybe it made him reckless. Either way, it carried him out into an ocean no one else from his world ever crossed. The official story remains the simplest. He drowned somewhere between the wreck and the shore. But the unofficial one, the whispered version that moves through history like a ghost current, refuses to die. It says he reached land, that the sea didn't take him, that men did. It says his name was never spoken in those villages again because to speak it was to risk another curse. We'll probably never know. The Dutch records remain cautious, the locals stay quiet, and the jungle doesn't give up secrets easily. What we're left with is a story that feels half dream, half warning, about how far curiosity can push a person, and how even the most powerful name in America couldn't protect its son from the ancient laws of another world. Michael Rockefeller wanted to find the edge of civilization. Maybe he did, and maybe the edge took him. No one ever found a body, no raft, no clothing, no trace, only the overturned pontoon drifting empty, its paint peeling under the tropical sun. The sea never gave him back, and the silence that followed became the story itself. The official record says, presumed drowned. The rest lives in whispers and tidewater myths between what's written and what's never said.